Richie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, Acer.
Hello, Sin. Hello, Richie.
That was very serious. I feel like I'm about to get reprimanded for all the shit I talked before we recorded.
If I have to answer another Bjork question, I tell you what.
And hi, everyone. So today we have a very special podcast with a very special guest.
Hello.
Introduce yourself, special guest.
Hey, it's me from my channel, AesirAesthetics. Sin contacted me out of the blue, and now I'm here.
A much more popular, much more interesting, and much better channel, might I add.
Might we both add? No, I've really been, ever since you contacted me, Sin, I've been listening to you guys. You've made so many just days at work fly by.
Aww.
Richie, do you know how I discovered Acer's channel?
No, I don't.
I was looking for Demon Souls lore because I'm getting more into it, and I was trying to brush up on things. And then I noticed that this channel had a video titled Demon Souls Translations with Loki.
Oh.
We have a mutual friend.
Yeah! It was like, wait a minute, that's not us. And the really cool thing is that you actually have a lot of Soul stuff, but specifically Kingsfield, which is the best Souls game.
Yeah, Kingsfield Souls, of course.
And today we're going to talk about Kingsfield and Demon Souls and how Demon Souls is like a spiritual successor to Kingsfield.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yay. Let's start, first of all, by talking about Kingsfield.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay. So, do you want me to take the helm, or do you want to?
You're our guest. You do all the work.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay, so Kingsfield, a bunch of office software developers in Japan at From Software, they played Wizardry and they said, "Hey, we can do this." And then they made Kingsfield 1, which we didn't get. And then they made Kingsfield 2 and 3, and then they made a bunch of other stuff, and then they made the Ancient City. So you asked me, Sin, off mic, if Demon Souls was initially supposed to be Kingsfield 5. I had never heard about that.
We know that it was supposed to be a lot more like Kingsfield initially. It was supposed to be a first-person game.
Oh.
And it was supposed to be a lot slower. And what Miyazaki did was he was the guy that, as far as we're aware, pushed it to be third-person and made it, like, it's weird to think of Demon Souls as faster, but he did make it faster.
He was like, "This is nothing like Eco. Make it better."
Yeah. But yeah, we do know, it's actually recently, like quite recently actually, some assets were found from when it was first person. Like it can operate in first person if you play with a couple of lines of code. So,
Oh.
yeah.
That is pretty interesting.
What year was Kingsfield released?
94.
Yeah, it's like a really, really early PS1 release.
I think it's the 13th they ever released.
They didn't come out outside Japan, but we did get Kingsfield 2, which they called Kingsfield. And
yeah,
Sin and I have both played the original Kingsfield, and we streamed it for a bit, so people will be kind of familiar with it.
Yeah, that one, that's a much better game than the original Kingsfield. I love the original Kingsfield, but it is mired in clunk and just baffling design decisions. And it's very interesting because if you track the changes from Kingsfield 1 to Kingsfield 2, it very closely mirrors the changes from Demon Souls to Dark Souls, where you have Kingsfield 1 is a lot more linear. It has these 5 levels you're descending in this royal cemetery, and you go linearly through each one until you reach the end. Whereas Kingsfield 2, it starts out, it's a bit more open, you can go in more directions, and then the world is a lot more interconnected and it's a lot more free-flowing. I thought it was very interesting that there was this sort of similarity with their two franchises.
Yeah.
Did Miyazaki work on Kingsfield?
No.
No,
He didn't join until like the mid 2000s, I think.
Did he work on Armored Core?
yeah, he was
Yeah,
a
he did.
coder on something.
He did For Answer. That was the first one he directed.
Okay, right.
Oh, he directed one.
He directed Armored Core For Answer, and then he did Demon Souls after that.
Oh.
There's a bunch of recurring names and things from in between For Answer and Demon Souls.
Oh, so he was just shuffled around.
Yeah, well, there's like Ostrava's a character in Armored Core For Answer. There's like a character called the Old King.
Oh.
Yeah. There's a mech called the Rider Palace, which ends up being a weapon in Bloodborne. Like he sort of.
Who lets this uncreative man make video games?
Well, no one can stop him now. He's the president. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we were talking on a recent Demon Souls thing about how there's just so much continuity of like theme and character between For Answer and Demon Souls in terms of like what he's playing around with.
I have to play that one then. Is it good?
Well, it's kind of like we talked about what he did with Demon Souls initially being like a much slower thing, and he made it faster and more like actiony. It's the same thing with For Answer, where it plays quite differently to the other Armored Core games. So if you're used to them and you pick it up, it's like, what is this?
All right, I'll have to check it out then. You talked about Ostrava. I think Ostrava is like a nod to the Kingsfield protagonists, because whenever you play those games, in the beginning, you're always just sort of stuck running away from everything, hiding in corners, and you're desperately searching for healing grass. And when I first played Kingsfield, I was like, oh, I'm Ostrava. This character makes so much sense to me.
That's legit. Now that you
Yeah.
put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're also a lot like Dark Souls in that subsequently every subsequent entry into the franchise sort of tries to retcon the previous ones a bit, and by the end, like the Kingsfield 1 presented in Kingsfield 3 is a game that never existed. Like Kingsfield 1 is like super straightforward, but Kingsfield 3 and all the lore manuals and whatever, they presented as there was this like grand mythos and creation myth, and here's like this destiny, and it's just this didn't happen. So they have this there's this fever dream in which the protagonist of the first game wakes up in the middle of the night and he's given the holy moonlight sword, but you just find that in the dungeon. Well, you don't just find it. You kind of you find another stone sword, and which was it's the moonlight sword was transformed into stone to hide it away from the villain from memory. But they retcon it so hard that there's no real continuity all throughout. It's really annoying when you're trying to explain the stories of them.
You know how in Kingsfield 1 at the end, when you fight like the final boss, everything is futuristic sci-fi virtual reality?
Yeah, that's Kingsfield 2, yeah.
Kingsfield 2? Oh, that's Kingsfield 2.
Yeah.
It's like Final Fantasy, where it has different numbering, like in different countries.
Oh my god, yeah, I thought that was Kingsfield 1.
It's Kingsfield 1 if you're not in Japan.
I was convinced it was like Kingsfield 1-1.
Oh.
So, okay, well, my question was, does that show up in any other Kingsfields?
The sort of Tron environment.
Yeah.
Not really. I think it was just you were in some sort of dark pocket dimension or something, or it may have been supposed to be some sort of crystal area. Kingsfield 2 has a lot to do with crystals and healing water and all that sort of stuff.
Like Sekiro?
I'm not too familiar with the lore.
There's magic water.
Oh, there's magic water.
Sekiro has a healing spring that comes from a dragon, a white dragon. So
I've played that game twice, but I kind of get that game is about immortality from a dragon, and you have to separate it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else. It was in my second playthrough that I realized the final boss was the same old guy. The first time he did, like, a hand came out of Junishiro's neck, and I was like, "Who's this guy?" I'm sure the lore explains it.
Oh, well, let me blow your mind again. You know the guy in the mask?
Who? Oh yeah, Tenku. The Tenku guy. I know about him.
Yeah. You mentioned that the numbering is weird and that the first one was not released.
Outside of Japan. It was never released outside of Japan.
Yeah, but there is like an English fan translation available or something.
Yeah, you can emulate it in translation. It's pretty good.
And they never remastered it or anything?
No. And it's super weird because they'll do the Spyros and Crash Bandicoots, and those sell really well, so I get it. But like the Kingsfields, that's another money sink for Sony. Not money sink. That's another money trap where they like the start of a new console generation. They're like, hey, Demon Souls remastered. We want all the Souls fans to come to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're waiting for the PlayStation 6 to lock in the Kingsfield exclusives.
Is that your prediction?
That's my hot prediction.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say Kingsfield is gonna come out. Kingsfield remastered, reimagined, whatever. It's gonna come out in March 2025.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, because Acer, you don't know this, but I'm kind of a Loracle.
Oh.
I predicted a lot of things. Like, I predicted that Demon Souls was gonna happen this year, next year. predicted.
You and half the internet, but yeah.
No, but I predicted without actually knowing anything about anything.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
different. I predicted the Ringed City.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I predicted the Ringed City. You heard me right.
You were like, I see disappointment. I see so many beautiful vistas you'll just have to run through.
Shade. Hi, Ingrid.
You predicted that Ludwig killed Maria.
Thank you. That is one of my best predictions, most powerful ones too. People thought I was crazy, but there you go.
That's yeah.
I love how dejected Richard is. Like, this isn't a fight worth going into.
It's been going for 2 years, and I woke up like half an hour ago, so I'm just waiting for that. Waiting for breakfast to kick in.
Okay. So let me ask y'all, how was Kingsfield received?
It's always had a very dedicated fan base of people who loved it, but there was always this sort of group of reviewers who were like, this is kind of slow and it doesn't play very good.
What?
Well, those reviewers are right, but those games are still good in spite of that slowness.
Like there was no Metacritic like when it came out, but I remember at least the couple of Australian game magazines that I read, like they both hated it.
Yeah. The Uluru review and and the Dollary Do Times.
I'm surprised. When I played Kingsfield, I thought it was Kingsfield 1-1. Apparently it's Kingsfield 1-2. I thought it was pretty fast.
Did you unlock the frame rate?
No, because you can't just stand there. Like, you gotta move around, you gotta, like, move your sword, and things are a lot more powerful, so you gotta avoid getting hit. I felt that it was, like, a fast game. You know, like in Fallout, like Fallout 3, you can just walk around the desert. If somebody's attacking you, you can turn on bats, kind of take a little break, go get your coffee.
You mean it's not turn-based? It's a binary. It's either turn-based or fast.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're correct. It is. because like Asa mentioned Wizardry, and like I've talked about Wizardry a fair bit on these, and Sin has not played Wizardry, but like
Can you explain to us what's wizardry?
Isn't it just a bunch of Japanese kids ripped off D&D or something?
yeah, it's a first person. It's the sort of dungeon crawl. Like people, even if you've never played it, people will be familiar with this style of game. That's like it's a first person dungeon on a grid. You see like a bunch of corridors in front of you, and you're just moving one tile at a time, and then occasionally an orc shows up, and all of the like mechanics are stolen directly from Dungeons and Dragons to the point where it's amazing this was released and no one was sued. But yeah, Kingsfield is very much it's an attempt to do that in real time, basically.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the slowness of the Kingsfield games, it's kind of overstated. The only thing that's really slow is the turning speed. If they managed to crank that up, I think the games would probably have landed a bit better.
But by that you mean like it I think it is literally like 30 seconds to do a full 360 in Kingsfield. Like it's very, very slow.
Yeah, it is incredibly slow. I said this in one of my videos. You have to kind of maneuver the guy like a race car when you're navigating. At the other end of the map, there's a turn. So I'm gonna just start now, and then I'm gonna go like 45 degrees because there's another turn, and I want to just mosey right on over. But it's really good if you can get past that.
But you don't have to turn to play the game. You can just go sideways, forward and back, you know?
Well, that's how you can play Wizardry. Because in that you have like turning and strafing. You'll like Wizardry, it's not as fast.
Oh.
It's clickbait though.
You ruined it.
For reference, Asa, clickbait is what Sin calls anything with a menu-based interface.
Because you have to click, 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 click.
Oh yeah. You wouldn't give the System Shocks a try then, I imagine.
God no.
But going back to Demon Souls, it's interesting looking at Demon Souls after having played Kingsfield. I've become very aware of just that game comparatively to Dark Souls and the other games. It is much more in line with that sort of dungeon crawler sensibility, where every level, especially like Stonefang, that's just like a straight descent from like the industrialized sort of mining apparatus. And then they couldn't get any deeper because of the tough monsters. And then it's just like burrows made by these monsters. And yeah, all of those areas could feasibly be their own sort of could sustain their own dungeon crawling game.
Yeah.
And Dark Souls came and was like, what if it was all connected?
Well, Kingsfield 2 does the what if it was all connected thing.
Yeah. But that's still much more of a dungeon crawler than Dark Souls.
Yeah, it's a dungeon crawl that sometimes loops back on itself.
Yeah.
And it still has the defined areas like the mine and the nest and everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kingsfield 3 is kind of like an open world with just periodically you'll have to go into these dungeons, and the dungeons are kind of crap in that one because they had to like drastically reduce the complexity to be able to fit so many of them. It's still, I think it's the best Kingsfield, and I've caught some flack for saying that because people love Kingsfield 4. But I think the reason people love Kingsfield 4, it may have to do with emulation on Kingsfield 4. You can unlock the frame rate and it just plays normally, whereas unlocking the frame rate on the PlayStation 1 games, you'll just zoom across the map by pushing forwards.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys, what are the main differences between Kingsfield 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Well, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. You're making it so much more complex, Sin. The biggest change from Kingsfield 1 to Kingsfield 2 is it's basically just how much freer the world is, and how much more freedom you have in the progression of the narrative. And from Kingsfield 2 to Kingsfield 3, It's funny. I say that's an open world. I think it has less freedom than Kingsfield 2, but it's just set in like it's not set in a dungeon. It's set on like this open plain of Verdite where everything happens. And that's much more it's kind of like a mixture of the first two.
Yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with 3 because it never came out in PAL regions. We got Kingsfield 1, 2, and then Kingsfield 4.
Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
yeah, Kingsfield 4 that's not that is the Kingsfield in many ways, but it's like they made Shadow Tower and then they were like, "Hey, this is a much better way of making Kingsfield. What if we made the next Kingsfield a Shadow Tower game?"
Hmm.
And it's kind of a reimagining of the first one where it goes back into like the same formula where it's like explicitly about descending this ancient, not a tomb, it's a city that has been long since abandoned.
Hmm.
It dumps all the narrative baggage so it can kind of just tell its own story, and it has a lot of links to Kingsfield 1, just that like design wise.
Right. This is weird, but the thing that I noticed most in Kingsfield 4 is that a lot of this seems to have ended up in Dark Souls 2 at some point.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
like the
because
Ring
like
of
you
Wisdom and stuff.
things like that, but also like the way that the central sort of village area has a pit that connects to another area. And there's nothing stopping you falling down the pit other than if you don't have the right stats, you'll die. So you can kind of go down there at any point. And there's other like little set pieces, like the big underground city looks a lot like Shulver from the Dark Souls 2 DLCs, and there's a cave that's full of this noxious green mist that looks a lot like Harvest Valley, and I just noticed a lot of similarities, just aesthetically and design wise.
Yeah, the giants from Dark Souls 2, they kind of look like that forest giant who opens the gate. He has like 3 rivets in his face rather than the one hole.
Yeah, there's like a focus on like golem things coming to life when you go by, which they do again in Dark Souls 2, and yeah.
That is interesting. Does Dark Souls 2 feature an ancient city that began worshipping the darkness and then was consumed by the darkness?
It has several of those.
Does Dark Souls 2 have like a city which was beginning to spread a dark influence, so they needed to flood it?
I guess that's another thing that like we've brought up, is that because a lot of people's first engagement with like From Software was Dark Souls or Demon Souls, there is a tendency to think that like everything in that sort of popped into being with that series. But like once you play Kingsfield, you realize no, like the stamina bar based combat, the set pieces, even like the way Kingsfield 2 starts with, you're in like a hub area, and if you go in one direction, there's an area full of really hard skeletons, and if you run past them fast enough, you can get a bunch of like high level gear to begin with, stuff like that. Yeah.
There's also an area, if you run like take a left, take a right, and then go right backwards, you can get an early access to the fire magic.
Yeah.
It was really strange when I played it. I was like, oh wow, this game is much easier than I thought. Second time through. But yeah, they really like to recycle themselves. I heard you, Richie, in one of these episodes. I don't remember which one. You talked about this idea of I don't know if you were quoting Miyazaki or somebody, but this idea of you have good things on the top that flow like water, and then eventually they sort of stagnate at the bottom.
Yeah, that's a really common like Miyazaki design thing. He seems obsessed with like things flowing downward.
Yeah, that's after you said that, I realized, wow, that's actually in Kingsfield.
Yeah.
It's like because like just structurally you're descending the whole time, and you're acting as well in the retcon version, you're acting as sort of a conduit for bringing the cleansing light or whatever to the bottom, where the king Reinhard III has been transformed into like a PlayStation 1 version of the Bed of Chaos. He's like a crazy red tree monster. It's really notable that this is the bed of chaos. But the way their influence, because they had also this expedition that went in, and then the deeper they went in, the more they sort of started to break down all the guys.
Yeah.
It's not as pronounced maybe as in the Miyazaki games, because I think every main boss you have to descend to fight every one of them, don't you?
I think so. That's a common like dungeon crawl thing though, where like
Yeah.
literally they will like the how deep you are is literally like the level of difficulty. And they do that explicitly with Bloodborne, where the procedural dungeon parts, like they will just have a number assigned to them, like this is depth 3, this is depth 5, and it just does a multiplier to all the enemies to get them stronger.
Yeah. The only boss in Demon Souls which doesn't do that is, funnily enough, the old monk. Like that's like explicitly about ascending, but it's like this twisted ascension. It's framed as like this salvation where the angels will come and take you up, but it's much worse there, my friends. And yeah, they also took just visually, like Calamite is clearly based on Gyra, who's the bad guy in Kingsfield 2. Seath is brought over from Kingsfield 3 and 2. Not visually, kind of visually.
Well, visually, Seath's design kind of becomes the Dark Lurker from Dark Souls 2. The sort of weird angelic figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Dark Lurker is that optional boss, isn't he?
Yeah, it's the optional,
Yeah.
like, so it's like an angel thing that shoots halos at you.
Is it Gale?
No.
Excuse me?
Richie loves Slave Knight Gale, so I just thought
That's my
I'd bring it up.
favorite character. I love Gale.
You know what? we can actually, if you want, we can open up some dirty laundry here. I heard you guys talking crap about the ashes of Ariandel. Don't you love that? Like, hey, you have that wolf boss that they cut from the main game. It's back. Don't you love that?
Brilliant.
I think the best bosses in those games are the ones that are interesting.
Yeah.
Like fighting Sif, even like Dragon God, which is kind of a crap boss. I think that that's interesting. It's not just rolling around.
Oh, definitely, yeah. We talked about this a lot with regard to Demon Souls, where the archdemons and like a lot of the regular demons play out basically as like puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if they're not necessarily like tests of reflexes, so they're tests of like, can you figure this thing out?
They're tests of, do you have the thieves' ring?
Yeah. And that again, like we talked about this before, but that kind of comes from his Armored Core work, because in that he did a game where the sort of major opponents were just gigantic, uber complicated like mecha that you couldn't just take on head on. You had to figure out a way of like disabling its tracks or something before it was vulnerable, which they didn't really do before. It was pretty much just you shoot this thing and it dies.
That's interesting.
You know what it reminds me a lot of?
Go on.
Do you know how in Reborn, Tsuna has to face a lot of opponents, but he can't do it face on. He has to figure out a way to do it that's almost puzzle-like.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, I don't know how much Yu-Gi-Oh! You've watched. I've watched every season of Yu-Gi-Oh! It reminds me of how Yugi has to like out-strategize his opponents, and he always draws the right card at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
See, you're dismissing my Yu-Gi-Oh! Analogy here, Sin. I've never seen Reborn. I can't relate.
Sin, have you ever seen Yu-Gi-Oh?
I know of Yu-Gi. I was just trying to be part of conversation, just like nodding and smiling.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was rude.
So once again, Reborn Discourse has claimed another podcast. We're never going to get this ship righted again.
Reborn is so good. Acer, you haven't seen Reborn, right?
I've seen that. I think you sent me a GIF.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was. So I'm watching Reborn with my sister now, and she likes it a lot, but her commentary is similar to Richie. She's like, what's happening? Is this a cow or a baby? Why are there so many characters? What's going on? But we saw like 5 episodes, and she's coming over today to watch more. So
I feel like your sister and I need to watch this with you, so you're outnumbered, and you know that it is in fact just you. It's not the person you're watching it with's fault.
okay, so
Back on Reborn.
Back to Demon Souls.
You said cow baby. What?
yeah, oh my god, Lambo is a cow baby, and he has grenades in his hair. He also carries around a 10-year bazooka.
10-year bazooka.
Richie, could you elaborate on the 10-year bazooka?
No.
For the people listening, at recording, we're at 44 minutes. You're probably at like 43 minutes. I don't know how much he
Shade.
edits out.
They're probably at like 12 minutes.
There was one where you edited out over an hour.
Excuse me.
To be fair, it was... I agreed entirely.
Yeah, okay. Kingsfield 4 is really interesting because it goes back to the sort of hardcore dungeon crawling of Kingsfield 1, but it also front loads like an hour of just interacting with people on the surface. So you're like, oh, now I understand why it's so important that I go into the dungeon. It wasn't just that, like the previous games all began with sort of a text crawl, but here you're like looking at this little girl who's really just depressed and sad outside of her home because her mom is sick and because her dad went missing in a mine. And you go into the mine and everybody's just this sort of corrupted zombies. So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and the 4 also has, like, one of the first NPCs you meet is a soldier who's sitting on a rock talking about how we're all doomed.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
warrior?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that archetype again.
Not again, for the first time. No, well, there were actually a couple... well, there may have been a guy like that in Kingsfield 1. I don't remember. But, like, no, but like the pose he's sitting in, it's like, I saw him and I was like, oh, that's Crestfallen Warrior.
Yep.
And I was talking to him and he was like, I pretended to be sick so that I didn't have to go into the dungeon because I was scared. And nobody's come out of the dungeon.
Aww.
There's another really cool thing in 4 where there's like wooden barriers, and they won't break down with the sword you start with, which might make you think, oh, I just can't break these down. But it's actually like, it's either the strength of the weapon or whether it does bludgeoning damage. I can't remember, but like it's just the weapon you have. So
Yeah, I think it's bludgeoning because it's the pickaxe and the mace.
yeah, so if you like, it's not like a key. It's just like, oh, if you happen to have the mace, you can just come through here. So yeah.
Yeah, Kingsfield 4, like, even if they don't remaster the other ones, if Sin happens to be wrong for the first time and they don't remaster them, I think they could re-release Kingsfield 4. Just, like, get somebody in there to just speed up the movement speed a little bit and give it proper analog control or mouse and keyboard control if you release it on a PC. And they could release that today as like, hey, here's like a really good prototype of what you Souls fans love so much. Because that game, it totally holds up.
Yeah.
It's like, I was astonished by how good it is because you never watch like, here's the top 10 PlayStation 2 games. You never watch that and see it.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Well, it was only like Dark Souls Remastered that was sort of the first time they'd actually done a remaster of one of their games, and it wasn't even them. It was a third-party studio. They did a kind of Armored Core remaster for like an anniversary collection, but that wasn't like a remaster of a whole game.
I think that when they released the Sword of Moonlight level editor for Kingsfield, I think they remade Kingsfield 1 in that.
Yeah, it's the example project.
Yeah, I don't know if they included any story segments or just made the levels, though.
I don't know.
But yeah, I hated that Dark Souls remaster. Like you could look at Oscar's face, like in the mask, and the black like line in his mask, it was like shining.
Yeah, it
Excuse
all
me?
the armor looks like a Halloween costume where it's like
Yeah,
plastic that's treated to look kind of like metal, but it's not actually
yeah.
metal. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the look they were going for, like a reenactment of the events.
Oh.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
What a what a bad decision.
The Master Kojima does it again.
Kojima.
Too many Kojima particles.
But yeah, I don't know. Dark Souls in Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, they had like a really good lighting system where the
Yeah.
darkness was incredibly good and the lighting was really good. They've never really recaptured that, I don't think. Their games now always, even like when they're beautiful, it's always a sort of washed out darkness.
Yeah. From what we like, it looks like they wanted that for Dark Souls 2, and then it was just causing too many issues. And there was the whole like, I don't know if you remember it, but there was a big like, I don't know, fufara around
Yeah.
hey, the promo screenshots look a lot different to the game that came out in terms of lighting, and it's like, yeah, the lighting worked on PC, but they couldn't get it to run on console, and the whole thing ended up
Aw.
like, and again, like Bloodborne, not to the same degree, but the lighting in that, like the alpha lighting, is totally different, and it's to do with like it was just too intensive for the console to handle,
Oh.
so they had
Yeah.
to go back on it. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. And we actually touched upon Demon Souls a little bit. But for people who may not necessarily be familiar with Demon Souls, who are here solely for the Reborn content, could you please elaborate on what's Demon Souls?
It's Demon Souls. You know, Dark Souls, it's kind of like that. King Alant is tired of the world, and he wants to end it all. Find out what happens next in Demon Souls remake.
So now, let me ask you, what kind of stuff do you think Demon Souls took from Kingsfield, or was inspired by Kingsfield?
Um, I think. Well, the dark fantasy is one. Kingsfield, the original Verdite trilogy is it's very much about destiny and like here's a royal holy king of light, which not the god creator, but one of his many minions, one of his 3 minions. Like they destined this. Demon Souls. I don't know if it's like actively doing this, but it's very much not that.
Right.
I know you asked me what it took from it. I think it may have taken like, oh, I want to be like Kingsfield, but I want to be like Kingsfield 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Soul Brand, Demon Brand thing may have come from the Moonlight Sword and the Dark Slayer.
Yeah.
The Moonlight Sword is created by Gyra, the Light Dragon, and the Dark Slayer is not quite created by Seath, the Dark Dragon, but it's created, I think it's created from crystals he gave the High Elves or something.
Yeah, and like you sort of touch on there, like the high elves, which is not something you would ever hear in a Souls game.
No.
No, I'm just like
Yeah.
saying, like the Souls games, like a lot of the high fantasy stuff is like it's gradually phased out.
Yeah.
It's something you would hear, and you might hypothetically hear in Dark Souls, but you would absolutely never hear like the high elves in Demon Souls because it is so like grounded.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The premise of Demon Souls is just like the old one is back and the state of reality has been heightened. So that's why
yeah,
everything's so crazy. But that is ostensibly set in like a real world.
yeah.
Mhm.
We've talked before, like that's sort of the appeal of that, and also of Bloodborne, that these seem to be like this is a real place, and then magic stuff sort of twisted it into something else, as opposed to like Dark Souls and Kingsfield and everything, which are like from the very beginning. There's like light and dark dragons and elves and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of narrative carryover from
No.
Kingsfield. I think there's some like here's like a little fan servicey. Oh, it's the Moonlight Sword. Isn't that cool? the story seems a lot more inspired by like Miyazaki being a big role-playing fan, like Dungeons and Dragons fans and Berserk and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. In terms of mechanics or combat or whatever, what do you think is similar and different between Demon Souls and Kingsfield?
I think like the big picture stuff is that I think Demon Souls it is just you take Kingsfield, like this console locked dungeon crawler, and you just inject it with eco. And if you do that, you just get Demon Souls.
Hmm.
Because I replayed eco recently, so much of that game I was thinking, wow, I could just slot this into Demon Souls. Obviously not with the combat and stuff, but like even Dragon God, that is something that feasibly could have been done in eco.
Yeah.
It would have been completely out of place, of course, but I think the biggest takeaway from the Kingsfield was I'm just gonna take these dungeon crawlers and I'm gonna make them look a bit more interesting, more berserky.
More berserky?
more
like Berserk.
What?
Yeah, Miyazaki is kind of a fan of Berserk. You might not have.
What?
Yeah, I know.
No way.
The differences are subtle, but when you tune yourself to them, they're actually quite obvious.
Oh. Thank you, Richie.
See, I didn't know you were joking when you first asked.
Richie, you
Yes,
sound like
Sin.
you have something to tell me.
Yes, I do, Sin. It sounds like we just talked and you edited something out. When Artorias isn't on screen, the other character should be asking, "Where's Artorias?" So, we were talking a bit about, like, you talked about the combat in Kingsfield to you, quote unquote, feeling faster than the combat in Dark Souls, even though, like objectively in Kingsfield, you are like, no, I'm getting there. You
Go
are
ahead, I'm sorry,
moving.
go ahead.
You are moving slower, and you're attacking slower, and everything is much slower. Like, it is moving slower. So, I think what we sort of got at with that discussion that I don't think's in it anymore is that like in Kingsfield, because it is first person, you have to always be kind of on the ball when you're fighting something. You have to be very, very carefully strafing around it because you can't just lock on and like turn like you can in Demon Souls Onward. Like there's no way to lock, like just click, okay, now I'm always facing you. In Kingsfield, you have to very constantly reposition yourself in a reasonably complex, especially on a PS1 controller that doesn't have two analog sticks. Moving around these things in very precise ways to fight them. Like it's very tactical. Whereas, and like Demon Souls, we talked about that initially being first person, it carries that through the way that a lot of the enemies, they have very long, slow attack animations, and you have bosses like the Adjudicator and Phalanx that have they're slow and they have a very defined, like, you hit it here. This is where you got to hit it. And we talked about how, okay, once they locked that in, that, okay, now this is a series, even though it's not technically legally the same series, where you can click a button in and I'm now always facing you. The inevitable endpoint of that is Bloodborne, because that game, the combat is so fast and it's so based on dashing around really quickly that in first person it would be unplayable. And I said that, like, I kind of know that because I did play Bloodborne in first person a couple of times with the monocular to see what it was like, and it does not work at all. Whereas if you get Demon Souls and you get the spyglass, I think it's called, and you put that in, you can still kind of play it. It's kind of doable. But like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 absolutely would not work in. That was the Demon Souls / Kingsfield connection ? Theory real with special guest Aesir. Aesir, can you just reiterate where people can find you if they want to find out more about Kingsfield?
You can find me on YouTube, AesirAesthetics. You can find me on Twitter too. I'm nowhere else really. I'm just hanging around.
Can you spell like AesirAesthetics out so people know what to type?
Oh, it's just Aesir and then Aesthetics.
Could you spell AesirAesthetic, but like one letter at a time?
AesirAesthetics.
Could you use it in a sentence?
This has been me, AesirAesthetics. Please let me go.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming by. It was super fun.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Anytime.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you should not have said that.
Yeah. What's going to happen is a couple of months down the line, we'll be talking about something unrelated, and then Sin will be like, Richie, close your eyes. Look away from the screen. I have a surprise. It's like Aesir, but also like my ex from 12 years ago, and it's really awkward.
Look, now we can all watch Reborn together.
And we're just staring silently at each other the whole time. How are you? Good? You look alright?
Well, thank you for coming, Aesir. Thank you, Richie. Thank you, Sin. Thank you, Lambo.
Jesse!
Chelsea.
Aesir, let me ask you, how do you say bye in Icelandic?
Oh, you say bye.
Do you have one that sounds Icelandic? What I'm trying to say is I wonder if we can say bye in like Icelandic so the viewers are like, what is that?
Oh, we could do that. We could do see you later. That's sjáumst seinna. Just
My brain just literally exploded in my head.
it's like you just got frenzied in Bloodborne.
Literally,
like-
that's what happened. Where's my sedative? Is saying hi easier? Like hi or hello?
Yeah, you say hi and hello.
So my plan is a fail. Maybe next time.
Oh.
All right.
Okay, well, one of the people I wrote that Bloodborne thing with is Icelandic, so if she ever comes on, you can grill her.
You can talk to me, Sin, if you ever decide to have her on. Talk to me first, and you'll amaze her with your Icelandic skills.
I'll invite you and you pretend to be me. It's like a bait and switch. It's awesome. I'll type to you and you say what I type and then you speak Icelandic. She'll be so impressed.
Ah,
Mm-hmm.
that'll work. Hello, everybody. I love Dark Souls very much.
Thank you, SNL impression of Gorbachev.